yeah, we are in the place to be.
Hi ho, GP Mythos here, and welcome to the Little Old People Podcast. I'm here with my co-old person, Mark.
Hey, Kate. Hey, the little black dude.
If this is your first time listening, we're two oldish nerds looking at random fandoms from varying directions. I'm a historian and archaeologist by degree, and a former wage slave by trade. Mark is a jeweler, YouTuber, and fellow fan enthusiast. Well, January is finally over after about 5 months, and so far the least scary thing that has happened this year was the threat of World War III.
So it's only appropriate that we talk about a post-apocalyptic world, don't you think?
All right, well, in that case, let's review a movie. Now, I saw this particular film in theaters, and I was absolutely blown away by the animation, and I have to say I still am. I remember thinking that, it was an all-right movie, and I did eventually buy it on DVD after it made its way into the $5 bin. Not casting any shade, I just didn't have a lot of money at the time, and buying Lord of the Rings stuff was more important. Well, I watched it again a few years ago, and the movie was a lot slower than I remembered it being, but it still looked good. So let's see if it holds up to close scrutiny now that, cinema and gaming sins have hipped me to the worst of the cliches that tend to infest most films these days.
Let's begin on Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within.
Oh boy. All right. So the film opens on December 13th, 2065, with a woman standing on water, and apparently she's recording a dream that she's having, which obviously if you're standing on water, unless you're Jesus, you're definitely dreaming. So she gives us a quick exposition dump, and then we find out that it has been 34 years since something has happened to planet Earth. Humans are living in fear and isolation, and only she can save us. And then the scene shifts to old New York. And frankly, I have a question on that one. If the world ends, are we really going to be that concerned with rebuilding New York City in a new location? I'm so sick of movies doing this.
We have to rebuild New York. Futility is what we do.
Okay, I appreciate your opinion, but that is not how humans work. Like, in Futurama, it's intended to be a joke, but serious writers seem to have missed the memo that that's just stupid.
I 100% agree.
So there's a quick panning shot of what looks like an office building where, like, literal dead bodies have just been left to rot in their chairs, and all I can hope is that they are collecting serious overtime for their dedication to their jobs. And then we get an overhead shot of the city that gives us the usual post-apocalyptic clutter of abandoned and crushed cars, and then a U.S. Air Force plane that we've been following throughout this shot of the city lands in the middle of the city, scattering car shells all over the place. And then the woman we see at the beginning of the movie gets off the plane, puts on a Dragon Ball Z type scounder over her eye, and then we get shameless plug number 1 for Seiko watches.
I didn't see this as a shameless plug myself, but I also didn't notice it until doing this review, because unfortunately, advertisement has ruined me. They can be viewed as plugs, but I hardly believe that they were meant specifically to be plugs.
I'm sure they are, because this is how movies pay for themselves, by having product placement. I mean, if you don't like the word shameless plug, we'll call it product placement. So, she scans over the area with this scanner that she has on her wrist, and it says detects no life forms. Then she takes this big fuck-off gun with her as she begins to explore the ruins of New York City alone.
She's in New York, and you're questioning her taking a big fuck-off gun with her.
Well, there's nobody there, because we see more and more skeletons, and some of them are in situ in the cars where they died, still in their seats, and I'm pretty sure they still have their seatbelts on. I couldn't see that closely. And then she fires off a laser, a flare at me, and we get shameless plug number 2, this time for Pepsi.
The voice of the new generation.
So then the flare dissipates, and we get shameless plugs 4 through 7 for Palm, which is hilarious because they no longer exist, MasterCard, Square Entertainment, the producers of this movie, And a
It's
mailbox
also
with
doesn't
the
exist.
Postal Service logo on it.
Like, how is the U.S. Postal Service a shameless plug? There are mailboxes in New York City, even a post-apocalyptic one. They got to get their mail somehow.
Yeah, okay. Yes, yeah. Just deliver it to the middle of this burnt out, street. It's fine. Rain, snow, sleet, or post-apocalyptic hellscapes. The mail will be delivered.
I wish that were actually the case, but that's where things are.
So yeah, she checks her scanner again, but it's still showing no life forms. And she continues searching through the ruins, and then her DBZ scouter beeps.
Thankfully, it's not over 9,000.
So she follows the map that's showing on her wrist and fires off another flare. This time, as she's walking away, we see what looks like a will-o'-the-wisp appear on the ground near her.
And the animation is great here, like in the rest of the film, but I can't help thinking of the beginning of Sonic Adventure on the GameCube when I saw this part, because they're kind of in the same quality.
Okay, I guess I could see that, but that was like N64 level graphics. I mean, this is very, very smooth. I mean, this is like next level. I mean, yeah, it's 2001, but this is really beautiful animation. I do have to say that.
Yes, to keep the semantics going on. N64 was 1996. The GameCube came out in 1999, 2000. So kind of in the same era. Still, though, I understand what you're saying. This movie still looks good now. Okay,
Yeah,
it's 2020. This movie still looks good now. So yes, you are 100% certain, but some things about it just remind me of Sonic Adventure.
Okay, all right, fair. So the girl doesn't seem to notice these life forms that are appearing behind her until her scanner beeps.
Yeah, and kind of like how I didn't notice the product placement from before.
Yeah, which I don't understand. If something has happened to the world, you'd think she'd be looking out for this kind of thing, but I guess not. And her first reaction when she sees the wisps is to run away. When she does, more of them start to appear. But before anything remotely exciting can happen, what looks like a drone flies over and airdrops several people in full armor who start shooting at the wisps. And almost 8 minutes in, we get our second piece of dialogue.
Words. Yay.
Like literally, we've been watching this entire thing happen in silence. I'm pretty sure there was music playing, but I don't remember, so it couldn't have been that remarkable. But we're pretty much watching all of this.
There absolutely was music playing, and it was just that unremarkable.
Okay, fantastic. So yeah, she runs off, and the soldiers follow, and they fight with these wispy things. And there's a brief back and forth with the soldiers where she insists that there's a life form in the city, and she runs off to find it. And a guy with a black guy voice has to make a quip. And before anybody says we're being racist, we're not. It's Ving Rhames. Don't at me, at God.
Mm-hmm.
So she runs off and she finds this plant.
And wrestles Wally for it.
Wally.
Love that movie, by the way.
Yeah, we will never do a review on that movie because there's nothing to say except, oh my God, I love this movie.
I will agree with that.
Yeah, so she gets the plant, she extracts it. The soldiers quit back and forth at each other and insist that they need to leave, and then more wisps show up and they fight those. Now, my question is, as I'm watching this fight, I'm sitting here and I'm wondering, how are these things vulnerable to gunfire when they appear to be non-corporeal?
That's a question I asked as well, but it's answered with technobabble later on that's completely missable.
Awesome. So just really getting that story in there like a true writer, just packing it in.
Absolutely.
Scene changes and they're getting air evacuated after a very lackluster gunfight.
Which to me is a paradox, but here we are.
I mean, it was exciting as watching paint dry. I mean, one person is climbing a hill and they slip slightly as they're getting out of the rubble, and I'm like, oh boy, excitement, sliding. Just on a side note, when they get on the plane, whoever the black guy who's played by Ving Rhames, and I'm just going to keep calling him Black Guy. I didn't even get his character's name. I don't even think he had one. He takes off his helmet. He's the very first one to do it. And just for a second, our protagonist looks so horrified as if she cannot believe she's in the same space with this person. And I laughed way harder than I probably should have.
I can agree with that, too. To be perfectly honest, the facial modeling was excellent as far as the way things went, but the reactions of the characters to each other, kind of amusing how bad it was.
Yeah, it's like somebody had to have seen this movie. Somebody had to have looked at it in post that wasn't involved with it. Went, that seems like a not appropriate reaction. Maybe tweak a couple
what?
numbers.
You have a face?
Yeah. So then we finally start getting at least one character's name here, and that's our main character. That's Dr. Aki Ross, who's being played by the ever lovely Ming-Na Wen. And then we get more quipping from the soldiers.
The most accurate thing about this movie, because every military person I know makes jokes at every possible turn.
And I get dad joking your way out of a stressful situation, but this was bordering on fetishistic at this point, and we were only like 10 minutes into the movie.
True.
So the captain or whoever it is in charge still hasn't removed his helmet before he starts ragging on Dr. Ross. And then he makes a comment that like indicates that they clearly used to date. And I had to get up and go in the corner to collect my eyeballs because I was like, oh no, they're not doing this. And he takes off his helmet and we see Captain Asshat Gary, who's brown-haired, square-jawed, white, corn-fed, middle American handsome, shade 304, with optional chin cleft and broody pout for extra handsomeness.
Trademark!
And I was like, oh my god, I started rolling my eyes again.
Natural 2020, I hope.
You damn right. And I'm just like, really? This is what we're doing? So they fly back to this giant glowing dome called Barrier City 42.
Home of deep thought.
How did I miss that? How in the hell
I
did
have no idea. Give me your nerd card. I will give it back later.
Fine. So it says New York City, and looks like it was built just off of the Brooklyn Bridge.
Well, of course, they got a great deal on it.
Give me back my card.
Okay, fine. Here you go.
So, we know even in the apocalypse, Brooklyn is still the top of the food chain. Yo, 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 Brooklyn.
Hey, I'm still Jersey. I am not repping BK.
So, the plane lands, they go inside for decontamination. The soldiers are complaining a bit more about having to go through it, again, quipping at each other as they're doing it. And then we learn that those wispy things that we've just been introduced to are called phantoms.
Which changes the meaning so much, doesn't it?
It really does. I don't know. Calling them phantoms, I mean, it's so obvious, but why would you do that? It just seems like not the thing to do. I mean, knowing humans, we would call them something else completely stupid. I don't even know what, but we would call them something literally anything else.
I can't.
We wouldn't say phantoms. It's too many syllables.
Yeah.
So we get more pedantic quipping. It's
Quip, buddy, quip, pancakes.
just endlessly. And we're 13 minutes in, and I am already annoyed with every single one of these soldiers, and I just want them all to die. So Captain Asshat, who's played by Alec Baldwin, starts ragging on Dr. Ross a bit more, and then he goes into the decontamination chamber to get scanned. And he's got something in him.
Oh, no. Not again.
And Dr. Ross, so then she uses her security clearance to override the scanning machine and goes in to treat him, even though the technician in the booth is going, oh no, there's no time to do anything about it. There's just time to talk about it. And she'd already told Asshat, hey, my security clearance allows me to not have to go through the decom. And he's like, oh no, that's irrelevant. So then 30 seconds later, she uses her irrelevant security clearance to go in there and treat him.
Yes, this is foreshadowing, but that's not how you use it.
No, it really, really isn't. How do you keep a plot point in suspense? This is not it.
Mm-hmm.
So then, generic tough white female soldier, who's played by Perry Gilpin, stands there glaring, while Dr. Ross gets a high score on the medical video game
Of the future!
And the two guy soldiers that are there are like, oh yeah, looking at her, and they start nodding and crossing their arms, totally gaining her street cred or whatever. And then a door opens, and a creepy old scientist shows up to take Dr. Ross away. And then the soldiers stand there and quip at each other some more.
This did come out in 2001. I don't know why you're shocked.
I'm not shocked. I'm annoyed. This is not how you write
That's
dialogue.
true. Yeah, I agree. People talk very differently than what they're doing here. I'm guessing that the people that wrote this had experienced the conversation sometime many years ago and were trying to imagine how, words work. That's just how I feel. But
yeah, it definitely comes off that way. It's very, very disturbing. I mean, granted, we all talk in memes and movie quotes now, but we still don't talk like the way these characters talk.
Yes.
The scene changes, and we're Dr. Ross and a creepy old guy whose name is Dr. Sid.
Because Final Fantasy always has to have a Sid.
Yeah, you're right. They do. So Dr. Sid is played by Donald Sutherland, and they take this plant and put it in a machine to start analyzing it. And he warns her not to keep any incriminating notes or papers around, burns a notebook that he has with his Walt Whitman poems in it or something, and warns her off of Captain Asshat, and then she leaves. And I mean, this whole scene feels like it takes like 10 minutes, but it's probably like 30 seconds, and that's it.
Yeah, you're actually right. It did not take that long at all.
And it was completely unnecessary. It's like, because it never comes back to any of this. None of her papers are ever relevant. It's just like, why is this here? So next time we see Dr. Ross, she's having a nightmare. That lasts for about 30 seconds. And then it switches to a council chamber where we're introduced to General Hine, who's played by James Wood. And obvious villain is obvious. He's got slick-backed black hair, black leather gloves that he's wearing inside, and a black SS-looking uniform, and a long black leather coat on top of that.
By the way, he on the side models the Albert Wesker collection.
It certainly looks like it. This is the outfit they let him try off. It's just, really just sell it. I mean, the only
as
thing...
a complete side note, though, he looks amazing. But we just 100% know he is the villain, and there's no other person that we can possibly say was the bad guy.
Oh, no. I mean, the only thing was missing was from his villain starter set. He just needed the deluxe facial scar, but I suppose the scowl that he had would have to, do to make up for that.
Sometimes we can't afford everything. I mean, we had one hell of a budget on this, and they used it for everything but the actual story.
Well, yeah, that's very true. Definitely, as you said, showing off the Albert Wesker collection like it's Friday and his residue on Monday. So so then we finally learn in this council meeting what happened 34 years ago. Apparently, a meteor had landed on Earth, and these wisps or phantoms or whatever they are were released. And we know that attacking this meteorite does nothing.
Duh, they didn't have Bruce Willis or Aerosmith.
Why did you make me think about that song? I hate that song.
You poor thing, but
I hate you. I hate you so much right now.
Honestly, I hate myself for being able to make that joke.
So, direct assaults on this thing apparently just wake up the dormant phantoms inside of it, though it does kill the ones on the outside, but they just the ones inside burrow further underground, which apparently is also the same thing that happens to these phantom particles, whatever those are, when they get inside people's bodies.
We're going to have a strategy meeting with Lord Xenu after this movie.
So you'd think, with that body of evidence, quite literally, no pun intended, the first thing that they would not want to do would be direct assault. But beside, Dr. Sid, who's giving this explanation, you could almost hear General Villain rolling his eyes with bored disgust because they're talking scientifically about how to deal with this problem and not how to blow shit up. So then he decides he's had enough, and he interrupts Dr. Sid to belittle his nonviolent suggestion and urge blowing shit up because, nonviolence is just for pussies, I guess.
I like to call it push button problem solving. There are some of us who would just say, America!
Yeah, they probably would. And that's just, it's ridiculous. So, on a side note, James Woods is chewing the scenery like it is a full banquet. And I'm waiting for him to check and see if his hair has gone out. And
I love every minute of James Woods, plain and simple. He is having more fun than everybody else in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. He absolutely is. I appreciate that. But still, you're at 10 and I need you to 5. So Dr. Ross stands up and she shows the council that she has a contained phantom inside of her, which was only possible because of the project that Dr. Sid is working on, where apparently while she was out collecting plants, it was part of it. So the council members logically decide to vote to give Dr. Sid more time because apparently what he was doing is working to contain these things, not blowing shit up. And then General Villain gets kind of pissed off about that.
Very much so.
So then the scene changes again, and we see Dr. Ross prepping a little transport or whatever to take off and go scan inside the city dome or whatever. And Captain Asshat joins her to flirt, I guess.
Don't we see this too often in movies like this? Why do we always have to have that romantic, association between a couple of the main characters forced on us?
And it does feel forced. These characters have literally spent less than 5 minutes together in each other's presence, and we have already established that they used to date, past tense. Who among you, and I really cannot genuinely answer this question, just being who I am, but who among you, been put in a professional situation with your ex, is immediately going to start flirting with them? Who does that?
I unfortunately have been in this situation, and that is the last thing I try to do.
Okay, just wondered about that. That's what I thought.
Oh, trust me, you are not the only one confused by that whole situation.
Yeah, and so, Asshat's soldier friends come by and decide to, air quote, help him by sabotaging the transport so that he can spend more time with Dr. Ross. And then they have a boring couple fight and just skip. Epic skip.
And now on to something completely different.
Yeah. Just on a side note, I know that Aki, Dr. Ross, is animated, and none of this is her fault. I'm definitely not blaming the characters. but the way she keeps moving her head side to side when she talks or when the character is idling, like they're not moving, her hair is swaying constantly as if there's a small breeze following her around everywhere, and it is really distracting. And it was kind of starting to make me angry by this point.
I wish I could say that was, accidental, but that's the animator saying we spent a shit ton of our time coding hair physics, and we're going to use it, damn it. Also, Pantene Pro V.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is definitely a shampoo commercial, too. Absolutely.
The only person that is allowed to have anything that's on them blowing in the wind when there is no wind is Mojo Jojo, okay? Period. Full stop.
I don't know. I think Master Hiko's allowed to bring wind with him wherever he lands anywhere before he beats the crap out of people.
I want to disagree with that, but you have a valid point.
So Dr. Ross and Asshat are in the transport, and in the middle of their couple fight, mind you, they almost start to kiss.
Yeah, like there isn't an impending extinction level event about to happen. We got plenty of time to make out.
Oh, absolutely. And then they get interrupted, thank God, because I'm sitting here cringing and going, no, that's not how this works. But they get interrupted. And it flashes away, and we get an establishing shot on the inside of Barrier City 42. And all I can think of is, why does it look like this entire city is being illuminated with Christmas lights?
Because obviously the budget wasn't big enough for more than that.
I guess not. They spent too much time on hair physics and then realizes that, people inside of a dome with no sunlight would need light. So they're just like, whack up a load of Christmas lights. It'll be fine. No one will notice.
Mm-hmm.
So then the scene changes again, and we're seeing Asshat, who's getting a debriefing regarding Dr. Ross from General Villain, standing at the window, and he's like illuminated just a little bit through the blinds, and it's just casting shadows everywhere. And I'm like, really? You're telegraphing more that this man is the villain. How much more telegraphing do we need? We can see that he's evil.
Yeah, that's true. Let's start marking down all of the stuff that's going on, I guess.
I know, right? So, my bingo card's going to get full. So Asshat is then told that his team is being reassigned to guard and spy on Dr. Ross because she could be being controlled by the contained alien that's inside of her, like a human puppet. And he wants to be able to arrest her, air quote, for her own good.
Being arrested is never for one's own good. Either you're being silenced or it's, quote unquote, all part of your plan.
Oh yeah, this is definitely the last one. This is definitely the evil one. I mean, the only thing he isn't doing right now is twirling his mustache.
Which he would have looked wonderful with, in my opinion, but I guess the budget wasn't big enough for that either.
He would have looked like a sex pest, and then they would not have been able to put this out.
Tell that to the people who made both Anchorman movies. That's all I have to say about that.
Don't make me think about those movies. Don't do that. Why do you hate me today? just why? Why are you doing this?
I'm just glad neither of us had to suffer alone on this one.
Yes, that is true. So after Asshat leaves, General Villain decides that he's going to send even more men to keep an eye on the people that are keeping an eye on Dr. Ross, and this is just turning into a nesting doll of stupidity.
Matryoshka, or Yahtzee, or whatever the hell's appropriate here.
Turning off the movie?
Yes, that is appropriate, but we're doing a review here.
Yes, we must soldier on.
Yes,
so
complete side note, neither of us was able to make it through this movie in one sitting.
Absolutely not. I watched it on like a Monday, and then it was like a Thursday before I could get back to it, and I was hate watching it, the last part of it, last hour and 45 minutes.
Yes, that's about right, yep.
Couldn't do it!
Mm-hmm.
So the next time we see Dr. Ross, she's having a dream. There's explosions and there's some aliens shooting at each other. And all these aliens stop when they get to her. One of them appears to be like reaching out to try to communicate to her. And then suddenly she's falling. And then suddenly narration from her again about stuff that's completely irrelevant to what they're doing.
Yes.
And then she wakes up out of the dream that she's been narrating on a ship where Asshat and his team are scanning the area for phantoms. And then we get a title card letting us know that we have reached the Tucson Wasteland.
The main office for the head location of the Department of Redundancy, chaired, once again, by Mojo Jojo, seems to be here. Like, seriously, that is redundant as hell. Tucson Wasteland. Come on. That's like New Jersey Highway. This is a thing.
Pretty much, yeah. So they decide that they're going to drop distraction buoys, so to keep the phantoms away, and then they prepare to look for the life form that they need because they flew all the way from New York to Tucson to look for a life form. And we learn as they're walking off the plane that Black Guy's father died on the battlefield that they're about to walk across. And I looked at my watch and I'm like, well, that's his character arc done, so he should be ready to die any minute now. And I'm literally watching the scene, waiting for him to get shot.
Because, after all, he was 2 weeks from retirement, taking his kid to that baseball game, and writing that book he always talked about. Absolutely.
So they're looking for life forms, and they see a bird, but they're like, oh no, that's not the one we're looking for. It's a dead soldier's bio backpack.
Okay, seriously. An actual life form. Living in front of them, and it's not the one they're looking for. What in the actual factual robot hell? Come on. Also, the only thing I can think of was when I hear the phrase bio-powered backpack is several hamsters on wheels strapped to somebody's back. That's all I got for it.
I want that just as a conversation piece, just a backpack full of hamsters.
When I was a kid, my mom had a Yugo. And she had a sign in the back window that said, if I go any faster, I'll burn up my hamster. That is the reason I think the things that I think. I inherited the sense of humor.
That is the best. So they go and they get the backpack, this capsule out of a backpack. And just then, they get attacked by the Phantom, so I guess the buoys weren't working anymore. It was like a cat whose toy ran out of catnip or something, and they start attacking them. And the Phantoms eat one of General Villain's soldiers, but they don't take his physical body, just grab his spirit out of his body. But with what looks like maybe his blood vessels still attached, and the guy is screaming. But I'm looking at this, and all I can think of is, why am I bored?
I'm not really certain they're supposed to be blood vessels. They appear more like they're nerves to me. But first, yes, I'm thinking the exact same thing because it's supposed to be an action movie. Why am I not invested in the action? And yes, the whole thing just doesn't make as much sense visually. Just looking at what we're seeing does not make any sense. However you try to make sense of it, it just doesn't work.
No, it really doesn't. So the Phantoms seem to be attracted to Dr. Ross. So the soldiers pick her up and they run away. When they finally get their plane airborne, General Villain's men see that the Phantom in Dr. Ross is active because she passes out. So they demand that she be taken into custody. She's unconscious, and they want her to be taken into custody.
Because she is so dangerous unconscious, yes.
Oh, yes, as all people who are unconscious are, they tend to attack. They're lying on the bed, and then all of a sudden, shy surprise! So Asshat tells them no, they can't take her into custody. So then they threaten to relieve him of command, and there's a big fight going on. And Dr. Ross is having a dream about how the Phantoms destroyed their own planet, and there's an explosion, which startles her awake. And then one of General Villain's men shoots her. Tough guy, female soldier, kicks the gun out of his hand. Black guy knocks out the other one, and the guy that's got the worst quips is in the cockpit, and he keeps flying the plane while making quips.
As much as I love Steve Buscemi, he annoyed the shit out of me the entirety of this movie. He's a funny guy. He's a very funny guy. But somehow he never gets to funny in this movie. He really stops as frustrating the entire time, doesn't he?
Frustrating would have been a step up for me. He never got past annoying little brother demanding your controller. He never got past...
the little brother, I never really got to experience that. So I guess I've done it, but I'm not aware of that feeling.
All right, fair enough. But still, that yappy dog. He never got past yappy dog for me.
That I can understand. I am not a fan.
And this is another one of those scenes that's supposed to be action-packed and exciting, and I'm not feeling it. I'm just numb with this. I couldn't believe it. So they're flying. A Phantom passes through the ship, conveniently only killing another one of General Villain's soldiers. And again, the scene is supposed to be exciting, intense, and action-filled, and I am unmoved.
As much as I want to agree that it was supposed to be exciting, the X just didn't make it to the party. It only succeeded in sighting. It's standing there with, an overhead projector saying, this is a thing that happened in this scene. See appendix.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it shouldn't. I know they're animated, but what's Square's excuse? What's their excuse? They make video games. They can make scenes that are exciting. They can make characters move in dynamic and fascinating ways. And you're not seeing any of that on display here. And I think that's probably, I don't know. We'll talk about it. But it's just not. I'm not seeing it here on the screen. So we go back to General Villain, who's sitting in his office with his back to the camera, semi-darkness, his fingers crossed beneath his chin, a la Mr. Burns, and all he needs is a fluffy cat to stroke, and I think I'd be able to fill in my 100%, villain trope bingo card. It's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but for some reason it feels like there should be a more evil character behind him somewhere, kind of like Emperor Palpatine saying, "Good, good, let the hate flow through you."
Yes. Yes, and then he should get a call reminding him to implement Order 66. And it's just like, so...
You expect him to somewhere around here say, "I'll get you next time, Gadget." Come on.
Yes, absolutely. And your little dog, too. That is the level of villainy we're dealing with here. And she was scarier. So he gets briefed in full on what we, the audience, literally just saw. It's not even 5 minutes afterwards, and we're literally repeating the entire scene all over again. So then General Villain gives the order that Asshat and Dr. Ross should be arrested, and that Dr. Sid's work should be confiscated, which is in a direct violation of the Council's orders. But I guess a villain got a villain, yo.
We did see this scene. Now, yes, it's frustrating for us to sit through it twice, but because he wasn't there, he needed to, be briefed on it. But it doesn't make it less annoying. Don't have those two scenes directly next to each other. It's redundant as hell. It doesn't make any sense to us, but it does make sense to the story. But yes, villain's got a villain, yo.
But there's ways to shortcut that and still get that point across. Like you could have his guy standing there and saying they're getting ready to land, and we can obviously take away, at least those of us that are able to extrapolate from incomplete data, that he's just been briefed, and he can just give the order and move on without having to repeat it.
Yes.
That was only there if you were not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. But as far as him needing to know this information, it definitely needed to be known. But we already knew. Don't show us a second time. This movie is already long enough. Stop it.
So General Villain gets up and he goes to the window, and then we get more shadows falling on his face, and he gloats about how the Council is going to bow to his will, since he totally found, Asshat and, Dr. Ross out to be traitors.
Okay, I need to start a second villain trope bingo card over here. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the shadows on the face fills up your free space. So even though Dr. Ross had told them about the Phantom, told the Councils about the Phantom that she had inside of her, and there was no trial, and we have proof that Dr. Sid's method of containment works, and that a direct military assault does not work, he still wants to go with a direct military assault.
This is one of the things that illustrates the flaws of movies that have a military aspect going on rather than a movie about the military or military actions of sorts. For whatever reason, the character in charge of the military element always wants to just blow shit up. It's the hammer that turns all the movie's conflicts into nails in their eyes. I can't understand why this is the only way that military people are depicted in movies like this.
Yeah, there's no in between. It's always they're either super patriotic and we're at, Saving Private Ryan levels of everything, or this guy. There's no in between.
Yes, it's sad, but unfortunately those are the extremes, and no one seems to understand what the middle ground is.
No, military people are not that difficult to find. Just grab any one or two of them off the street and ask them a question or two. So we see Dr. Ross, and Dr. Sid is examining her, and she's dying. We're told that she's dying. So they take the seventh spirit that they're looking for, because there's 8 spirits, I guess, that they've been searching for this entire movie, and we only see her getting number 6 when we see her in New York. The 7th one was the backpack. So then they take the spirit, and it gets planted inside her body, inside the other 6 that she has already containing what's in her, the phantoms that are in her. And Dr. Sid tells Asshat that she needs a sympathetic person or spirit to anchor her to the world. So they, pop Asshat onto a bio bed and puts him under, and they hold hands, and he wakes up, and they're inside of her dream. I guess we're just not supposed to ask how that works.
Are we ever supposed to ask how things work in this movie?
I know. It's just irritating. So he's standing there in her dream, mind you. This is inside of her brain, trying to mansplain to her that she can't possibly understand the seriousness of the situation that he himself has literally only just walked into, and she's been living with for months, or for all we know, even a couple of years. And I'm about to get annoyed, and I can feel steam coming out of my ears. So then we jump back to General Villain, who has broken into Dr. Ross's room and is looking over her dream files, I'm assuming without a warrant, and decides that her dreams mean that she's being controlled by the Phantoms. And I'm assuming we're supposed to assume from this that that qualifies her to be arrested. Now, me personally, I believe the dreams are just your brain's way of organizing the stimuli that you took in over the course of your waking hours, and that there is no deeper meaning to them, and they definitely cannot be used against you as evidence in a court of law.
Now, the significance of dreams is still debated by psychologists, but for the sake of the movie, I will set my pedantry aside right over next to my soapbox, though I may be going back for the soapbox later.
Fair enough. So, he's standing there, he's looking at him, and we get the evil chin stroke. And I am just beyond done with this film. I think this is about where I had to turn it off and didn't go back to it for like 3 days. Because there was still an hour of the movie left. So.
That's painful even thinking about that. Because so much was just crammed into the first third of this movie that you have to process and make sense of and ignore at certain points or another to keep your sanity. That should not be a thing at all.
Absolutely not. I mean, at this point, we should already be close to the climax of the action and getting ready, and getting ready to roll downhill into something like a conclusion, and we're nowhere near that. So we go back to Asshat, who is now trying to protect Dr. Ross from a battle that is happening in her dream. It's not real. And then we see the same planet explosion that we saw earlier while she was on the transport. And she wakes up just in time to get arrested, before she can tell anyone what the Phantoms are, because apparently she's now found this out. We then jump back over to General Villain. And he's sitting in his office, stroking a photograph, and then we get his backstory, which I'm assuming is supposed to make him sympathetic. Mm-hmm. And it turns out he's got a narc on for the Phantoms because they killed his family. And I'm sitting here thinking, lots of people's families were killed. My dude, cool motive, still murder. Also, dead family members for character motivation cliche.
If this were a video, CinemaSins would have our heads finished.
They probably would, but the thing is, he acts his little hench boy. If he lost family to the Phantoms and the guy goes, oh, yeah, I did. He doesn't have a narc on. What's your problem?
I don't know. Maybe he got one too many wedgies in boot camp. I have no clue.
Maybe. So, General Villain sends his little hench boy to the barrier control center to sabotage the barrier so that he can then blame that incident on Dr. Ross and get permission to go up into space to fire his big old fuck-off laser. And there's still 45 minutes of this movie left.
Time equals importance, I guess?
Just a side note. As they're going into the control center, one of the guards uses his own personal ID and code to open the door to the control room. Wouldn't it make more sense if you're intending to frame Dr. Ross to steal her ID cards and codes, then arrest her afterward so that you actually have physical evidence that you could use to pin the blame on her? I'm just saying, this plan seems dumb and not well thought out.
Hold on. You and I have been watching the same movie, correct? And we agree that, General Villain is, in fact, supposed to be a villain, right?
Yeah. So,
he's been evil this whole movie. How do you not know how to villain correctly by now?
Exactly! I mean, it was right there. How did you miss? It was 3 feet in front of you. How did you miss?
He probably went to the Stormtrooper Academy of, how to shoot at things. I don't know.
Yeah, he probably did. We cut over to the holding cells, and Dr. Ross is attempting to explain to all of the soldiers and Dr. Sid what the Phantoms are. And the anticlimactic answer is basically ghosts. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
But it is appropriate, since Occam's razor.
Yeah, I guess. At this point, I'm just so disappointed in this film and just disgusted that I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah, this whole thing right now has gotten to a point where it's an endurance test.
Oh, yeah. So, General Villain's plan, he now explains to us, as all villain monologues will do, is to let in a few, phantoms to infect the city, and it has backfired spectacularly, as all of the phantoms that were hovering around the dome are now coming inside the city.
It kind of reminds me of a group, a couple of hundred hood rats at a concert they couldn't afford tickets for.
Funny you should say that, because they are using the bioetheric energy pipes, whatever those are, to come into the city. But all I can think of is now the city's got ghosts in their blood, and I now need to do cocaine about this movie.
As long as you share, I'll allow it, because I don't want to be sober during this either.
No, it's a crime against humanity. So the phantoms get into the control room and kill 3 people, mortally injure his little hench boy, and General Villain looks at his body. It looks at hench boy's body as it falls at his feet, has about a second of self-awareness at what he's doing is actually wrong, then just nopes the fuck out of there, leaving his men behind as the control center blows up, likely killing many in that room and all around it. And all I can think of is that this ticks the villain kills and or sacrifices his own men just to prove how evil he is cliche.
Yahtzee! Damn it, the wrong game again.
Stop doing that.
I'm gonna get it right. I know I am.
It's checkmate, damn it, checkmate. So the explosion in the control center of the whole city turns off all of the holding cell bars, and Asshat, Black Guy, Tough Girl, Quippy, and Dr. Sid, and Dr. Ross all prepare to flee.
The most egregious part of this whole thing is that Quippy gets credit for this.
Yeah, he does. Why is that always the case? Why?
I don't know. He's sitting here talking about how he is completely incapable of doing so. The lasers go off and they're like, hey, good work.
Yeah. There's got to be a cliche in there. I'll find it. We'll find it. So they are running away, and they get surrounded and get separated and get, I don't know, there's a bunch of random stuff is happening, and it's just explosions, things, excitement, and I'm not feeling any of it.
I don't think there was any excitement going on there, actually.
I don't believe so either. The next time we see them, Asshat and Dr. Ross are being surrounded by phantoms, and a car pulls up with Tough Girl manning the turret on the back of this car. And I'm like, wow, I almost got excited there for a second. Something interesting was about to happen.
Sit down, you might hurt yourself.
Yeah, no, put my head between my knees, take a few breaths. So then we get treated to almost a full minute of just wanton destruction and murder by these phantoms, complete with an airplane full of people falling out of the sky. Yeah. Now, granted, this movie came out in the summer of 2001. I want to say like July or June or July, something like that. There's no way they could know. But I can see why the DVD sales afterwards on this particular film were a little slow.
Yeah, I can see that too.
Because it's just people running and screaming and destruction happening all around them, and it's very evocative, and it made me mad, and I genuinely have to stop the movie for a minute.
I agree with that as well, because let's be honest here, kind of tone deaf for the time.
Well, I mean, it was prior, but still. I mean, I think they were more going for the classic, Godzilla, people running through the streets with, being chased by Godzilla kind of thing. But, and I suppose at the time it could have been taken in that context, but after that, you'd think that'd be a scene they'd go back and re-engineer and post and take it off the DVD.
You would figure, but again, here we are.
Yeah. We go back to Dr. Ross, and she's trying to get her ship, which apparently was impounded near the beginning of the movie. So they're driving off to go find her ship. A phantom, appears in their path, and they're like, oh no, we can't get through it. So Quippy, who's driving, pulls the car to the right, and they ramp through, in this open-top, doorless car, mind you, several glass windows, which, by the way, there's nothing to ramp off of. They just somehow jump the car through several glass windows to escape.
There was vocal objection to this plan, which I do give Quippy credit for, that he actually deserved. But, yeah, it was either die to this thing or die to, being shredded by, glass going through. So I guess make a decision and go with whatever makes the movie longer.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. They definitely did that. So, not surprising, black guy voice is fully arced out, his character is. So, he's the only one out of everyone in this vehicle is fatally injured. He's now has his heroic sacrifice cliche to fulfill. So, he rejects treatment and he refuses for one or two of the others to stay behind and help him and just, manfully asks for a gun.
I'd be mad, but I would do this, so I can't really hate on him. Nonetheless, it is, in fact, cliche.
Yeah. So he tells them all to leave, and the rest of the group slow motion walks into the hangar where Dr. Ross's ship is. And when they get there, of course the ship needs fuel. So they grab communicators and they start pre-flight prep and looking for fuel. And we get to watch them do this in real time. Padded movie, be padded, yo. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, there's a boot on her ship, obviously, because it's an impound, which they forgot to take off, and they can only do it manually, and I'm just sitting there going, just take another ship! No one will notice or care!
One of the things that does suck about this scene is there actually is a reason that Dr. Ross needs that ship, but it's so hard to care about the why. They needed her ship because they had the equipment to save Black Guy, but we both know they weren't going back for movie reasons.
Yeah.
So they could have just spared us all the bull and just moved on to the next scene. We knew he wasn't going to survive.
Exactly.
2 weeks from retirement, damn.
Yes. Going on that vacation he promised his wife. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Quippy, who still will not stop talking, is trying to get the boot off of the ship. And I'm sitting there watching this, and all of a sudden I have this vague memory from when I saw this the first time of him getting shot. And somehow that memory was the only thing keeping me buoyed as I watched this scene. And I'm also thinking, talking is not a personality trait. It's just annoying. And then, lo and behold, it gets even better. He doesn't get shot. A phantom kills him while he's standing at the keyboard. And all I can think of is, ole, 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 ole. That is the inappropriate reaction.
There's something about when you get excited about things like that just makes me so happy to be doing this with you. I enjoy that so much.
I'm probably going to get put on a watch list for this, and I don't care.
If you're on it, so am I, so we might as well go all out.
So, Tough Girl is standing there with him, which, by the way, she can't understand him, but for some reason, they always partner the two of them. So then she starts freaking out and shoots until her gun runs out of ammo, which, this is a laser gun, mind you, and after all the shooting they've been doing, all the way up to this point, this is the very first time we're seeing a gun run out of ammo. So then, she stoically lowers her gun and allows herself to get killed by a phantom as well.
Now see, this is why you should never stop using your Game Genie in the middle of a game.
Yeah. So Asshat is up in the control tower. Apparently they have control towers, so he's up there and he puts the ship on autopilot, sees that two of his soldiers get killed, screams the usual no, shoots out the window, jumps out of a second floor window, lands without hurting himself, and then shoots the phantom that killed Quippy and Tough Girl. And he's just screaming, son of a bitch, as he's shooting, but they mute bitch, which I thought was kind of odd.
I agree with that as well.
I'm like, this is a PG-13 movie. You had one swear. Go for it. So we look around, and Black Guy is still alive, shockingly. He wasn't the first one to die. And he starts shooting at this phantom as well.
Of course he wasn't the first one to die. This is not a horror movie.
Well, yeah, that's true. So they've already filled their, ethnic quota with Dr. Ross. So, I guess they were obliged to keep him alive.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense.
So he shoots this big phantom and it still won't die. So then he shoots the hangar door closed so that no one can come back and get him. And I looked at my thing and I'm like, why are there still 30 minutes of this movie left?
It's hard to believe that all of that happened in just 15 minutes. It's so difficult.
And it's difficult. You know why? Because all of that was nothing. That should have been like a minute and a half of the movie, not 15.
Yes, exactly. Like, this is not color commentary at this point. This is egregious. It's difficult. I cannot understand how this movie keeps moving this way.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I was like, I'm going to pull out my phone. I'm going to go check Instagram. I'm going to do literally anything. But I'm like, no, you have to finish watching this movie.
Right around here was when I couldn't continue, and I said, screw it, I'm going to take a nap, and woke up the next morning.
So we found a cure for we found a cure for insomnia. Cool.
Yes, we have.
The Phantom comes through the door because shooting the door closed obviously is going to stop them. They're non-corporeal. Kills Black Guy, and I don't know how Asshat knows this, but he wants to stay behind to fulfill his section of the heroic death cliche. But they get the plane off the ground and come back and rescue him at the last second. So there's this weird establishing shot. The ship that they're in is flying towards the Earth from Mars, not leaving Earth as one would expect, because they're flying towards the camera, and I'm very confused.
It's true that it's a very weird shot, but it's not Mars that's back there, it's the moon. But it really doesn't help the problem, but at least they're leaving the correct planet. It's still a weird-ass shot, though. Like, I can't understand why that's the way that they framed it. No clue.
Yeah, no, I was definitely very, very confused. This is 1 hour, 10-minute mark if you want to have a look at it yourself. I couldn't understand it. The shot made no sense. So Asshat's sitting in the ship, being sad because all of his friends are dead. And then Dr. Ross cries for about 10 seconds, and then I think they have sex for some reason.
I still disagree that was the case, but hey, it's there.
Well,
I just have to accept it.
I'm going to say that when I went to look at their wiki, it said that she was supposed to be pregnant at the end of the movie, but they took it out. They took that there was a reference to that in there. They removed it. So this is the only place where that would have fit. So that's why I made that assertion.
Well, can't really disagree with that, but I just don't want to imagine these two emotionless ass people having sex. It's just hard. It's very difficult.
And see, now I'm thinking about the sex bots from Futurama.
Just gonna push that out of my mind until after we're done with the podcast.
Okay, not to kink shame, but I don't want to know. So the next shot we get is we get the impression that General Villain is stowing away in somewhere on Dr. Ross's ship, loudly loading a gun, which I've never done that, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't sound like this. I mean, it sounds like he's doing it in just the most echoey area, and the sound is just carrying. And he's, preparing to do the honorable thing, and he's going to commit suicide, but he's going to do it in Dr. Ross's ship so that she can be blamed for his death. And, but they guess they couldn't let the the bad guy go out that easily. So he's just sitting there looking at his gun, and he just can't do it. And then a computer, terminal in front of him starts beeping, and he abandons his gun and to go and look, and it says that the ship is headed towards the big fuck off cannon that they've been talking about all this time called Zeus. And I'm just like, wow, the Japanese really love Greek mythology more than anybody I know.
Then you would absolutely love Appleseed. Lots of mythological names there.
Okay. So, yeah, so Dr. Ross and Asshat return to the cockpit, and Dr. Sid explains that the eighth spirit he's discovered it. He's been scanning the planet while they've been doing whatever it is they're doing, and the spirit's in the crater that was made by the meteor Phantom when it landed 34 years ago. So they can drop the other 7 spirits that they have into it, or the wave pattern or whatever that they're created, because it's like an energy pattern that they're trying to recreate. And they can drop that into the crater and complete this energy wave that will then get rid of the Phantoms. Then there's another establishing shot, and then we realize that General Villain is on his own ship, and he arrives at the Zeus cannon in what looks like a very, very chunky Klingon bird of prey, which confused me. And we never see him go in. They want to show us everything that they're doing, but we never see him actually get off of his own ship and go into the cannon. We just get a shot of him taking a video call with the head of the council, who has moved from New York to Houston. He then bald-faced lies about why the barrier failed, and they just hand him over the access codes to the Zeus cannon without asking any further questions, and just dumb politicians be dumb.
I have to say, just this scene in and of itself is hard to interpret as like an actual conversation. And somewhere along the lines, I should have and I didn't until just now think of this, but Houston absolutely has some problems.
Yes. They have 99 problems, and General
Mhm.
Villain is
And this
definitely
bitch is one.
Absolutely. Ugh. It's just so stupid. It's like the scene makes
Yes.
no sense in the context of literally anything. They have no reason to give him this absolute power.
None. Not even a little bit, because the danger as perceived is not what they think it is.
No, and it hasn't changed from what it was when they were in New York. I don't know, maybe I was just trying to watch this movie, the red filter over my brain of rage was just clouding my understanding, but it just didn't seem like they had any reason to give him this power, but they do. So he then goes up to the crew of the cannon and tells them that they're going to fire on the Phantom Crater, but he's doing it while standing in front of a map of what looks like the continent of Africa. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the Phantoms landed in Africa. That's cool. The seat of humanity. This is the seat of humanity's destruction. And I'm like thinking there might be something clever going on here, except it smash cuts into the next scene where with a title card on it that tells us the crater is in the Caspian Mountains. Now, unless they moved them, those mountains are between the country of Georgia and the Black and Caspian Sea in southern Russia.
Yeah, most moviegoers don't know geography. And it is also another awkward shot, which for some reason this movie is excellent at. But the Zeus cannon is being moved into position when Africa is on the screen. The path is going over the continent, but it's heading further towards, Asia or side of East, as they labeled it. Still, though, the way that they have it shot, yes, I can completely understand why anyone who understands what a map looks like would have difficulty with, seeing the entirety of the continent of Africa and then seeing Caspian Sea. Like, wait, those aren't near each other. How is this a thing we're doing?
No. And granted, GPS wasn't a thing yet, but again, ships have been doing it for thousands of years. You just put in the longitude and latitude and then wait for the planet to spin the right way. You only have to wait a few minutes. So
And we are constantly moving.
I mean, the people on the International Space Station see 22 sunrises and sunsets a day. So we get a scene now at the crater where Dr. Ross and Asshat are in a small vehicle driving to the crater trying to find the eighth spirit. And General Villain is sitting in the seat of the Zeus cannon in space saying, we'll be firing it in 3 minutes. And then 45 seconds later, he fires. Only reason I know it's 45 seconds is because normally in movies when it says, oh, we'll be 3 minutes from this, 5 minutes from this, it's like 95 movie minutes later. I was literally like, okay, 3 minutes, it'll probably be like 5. Literally less than 30 seconds, he's firing. And I'm like, shortest 3 minutes ever.
Couldn't wait.
No, I get itchy trigger finger, I guess. Yeah. And this crew on the Zeus cannon sees Dr. Ross's ship, and they're like, we don't want to fire on that. That seems like a not enemy ship. And he's like, oh, no, that's totally the enemy. Just keep firing. So it does exactly what Sid said it would do, and it frees the spirits. It kills some of the spirits that are outside of the crater, and it releases more phantoms from inside of it. And just giant throbbing tentacle arms is what we next see appearing out of the crater. And all I can think as I'm looking at this is just, oh, Japan.
Where 60% of the world's weird stuff comes from.
Yeah. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
And that is a completely appropriate feeling to have.
Like, literally, you could have looked like anything, and you decide to go with giant throbbing tentacle arms. So one of these tentacles comes out and hits the little their vehicle pod that Ross and Asshat are in, and it breaks it off from the main ship, and they crash into the crater, where they are instantly surrounded on all sides by phantoms. But, I mean, and this wasn't even a hard landing. They were only like a few feet up in the air. But as soon as they land, Asshat gets knocked out. And I'm like, oh, he has a glass skull. Good. I'd have personally got up and left his ass, but Dr. Ross doesn't, and she tries to call General Villain and tell him to stop firing because there's people in the crater, and he poo-poos her and tells her that she's just making up stories to make the ghosts stronger and that he needs to keep firing. And I'm like, why? You can obviously see the phantoms are growing. The technicians in the cannon are telling you that the phantoms are getting larger, and he's just like, no, keep firing!
I thought he was still firing because he was an asshole.
He can be both. It can be both.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's.
Well, one is not mutually exclusive of the other.
Yeah, you're right.
So he orders them to keep firing,
Assholes!
And then the cannon, of course, overheats, and he's just like, no, firing, keep firing. And I'm just thinking, man, what a dipshit. You don't know how to use any equipment at all.
Well, he wants to blow something up, but I guess he didn't know the cannon was on the list of things that could blow up.
Yeah, because, you only become a general by just, walking in and telling them to let you do that, not, things like going into military training, graduating from West Point or other prestigious military academies or any kind of military training.
Mm-hmm.
Even 2 weekends a year at the National Guard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a huge tentacle oozing out of this crater. You could see it on the the monitors in the cannon. And General Villain just goes down into the belly of the cannon, pushes some buttons, throws a few levers, and keeps firing manually until he blows up the cannon.
Why do you fire and fire and fire manually until you kill something? Because all that happens is you succeed in killing plenty of somethings. And he already had done that before he got on the cannon. I think he kept firing because he was mad it wasn't the Phantoms he was killing.
Maybe, but I guess, he had a murder boner on, and the power of boners is always stronger.
Yeah.
So, the only thing he really did kill was the eighth spirit. So, Dr. Ross and Sid keep scanning for a different one, hoping another one will just appear. And then Asshat comes along with his gun, and he starts wanting to shoot everything. And instead of telling him to just cool your tool, we're scanning, Dr. Ross goes back to the pod to go to sleep and see if she could communicate with the Phantoms.
Yeah, because that's what you do when you're in, the middle of a firefight. Take a nap.
Yeah, I guess that narcolepsy is it's bad. So, as with all good Japanese entertainment, there's always a good chance of a girl getting poked with tentacles, and this film is no exception. Dr. Ross gets jabbed with several, even one that goes through her abdomen and begins glowing blue.
Like she drank a monarch from a planet of sentient liquid.
Yes. And apparently this is what fills her with the eighth spirit. But this is also the part, I think, where they were going to mention that she was pregnant, because I'm pretty sure the eighth spirit was supposed to be her baby. But they changed it to some random whatever MacGuffin that they find inside the crater.
I don't know which one had less taste to it, but here we are once again.
Yeah. So she opens her eyes and plugs into the ship and sends the wave pattern to Dr. Sid, and then Asshat comes back and he proceeds to badger her like a child, asking her if she knows what she's doing as she's sending off this scientific information, and I just wanted to punch him in the face.
Just remember, 5 points for the chest, 10 for the face, and 15 million for the balls. That's how this sport works.
So, she just ignores him and carries on doing what she's doing, and obviously it worked. Oh, yeah, this is the part where General Villain finally overloads the cannon and explodes it, thus killing everyone on the space station.
Been saying it all during this whole thing. We are good at blowing stuff up.
But yeah, not what needs to be blown up. And then that's just it. That's the end of your antagonist. I mean, he's just blew himself up. I mean, it's so stupid and anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as much villaining as he was doing, you would expect him to, at the very least, survive for a few moments longer after all of this ridiculousness came up with the at the end of the movie and his eyes open type of situation. But apparently that wasn't the way they wanted to go with this.
And then die and freezing in space or something. I don't know, but no, he just blows up and that's it. He's gone. We never see him again. So back on Earth, these tentacles have turned into enormous monsters, and Asshat gets injured, and Dr. Aki drops down on her knees and she's next to him. She looks at him and she goes, "Oh, please don't die. I want you to live. No." I'm not exaggerating. That's as much inflection as she put into this begging him to live. And I'm sitting there going, die, 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 die. We're 5 minutes away from the end of this movie. Just please die. So somehow she decides that she's going to sacrifice herself and decides to climb into this massive hole that the Zeus cannon created in the asteroid or whatever, in the meteor. And Asshat follows her and he says, "No, I'll do it." And somehow he gets absorbed by a phantom while he's holding on to her. but she doesn't get sucked up into it. And he somehow gets projected into the giant tentacle monster.
The way this scene was put together, like watching as the blue glow within her just transmits through him and then into the monster, it kind of seems like this special wave they've been trying to form looks like more of an elaborate form of static electricity.
Yes, and it's just unnecessary. I don't know. It didn't make any sense. The transference didn't make any sense. But all I can think of as I'm looking at this scene, and it's probably the wrong thing to focus on, but just, yay, Assad is finally dead. Ole, 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 ole.
You got to find your silver lining somewhere, I guess.
Absolutely. Just at this point, I'm just sitting at my computer just going, fuckity bye! Thank God he's dead. So we see the wave, all the phantoms suddenly turn blue and start going into space, like this giant laser being shot into space, and then the phantoms start leaving Earth.
I don't know if anybody else realizes this, but that's the ending of the game Mass Effect 3. Plagiarism?
Spoiler alert! So Dr. Sid somehow manages to bring Asshat's body and Dr. Ross back up out of the meteor crater, and as they're coming up, the sun is rising, and the way that they did this shot, it's panning down over the two of them, and she's sitting there with Asshat's head in her lap, and I'm just had a moment, like my heart just seized in terror that he wasn't actually dead and that he was going to revive at the last second. And I'm just like, no, don't do this to me. But thankfully, he didn't. And then we get the credits.
Yeah, that's kind of how this movie should have ended, and it also should have ended probably about 40 minutes before this ending, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so much fluff and stuff in here that was apropos of nothing, and I won't say that I hate this film, because that's a little too strong. Like I said, I had favorable memories of it initially from seeing it in the theaters. We paid money to go see this. I saw the previews for it. I got excited for it. We went to go see it. I remember having a favorable opinion of it initially, but I have to say, I will not be watching this movie again for a long time, if ever.
I will say this, this movie is not great, in short. In long, it had a lot stacked against it being great as well. I mean, during the time it was being made, movies were kind of going through a shift, in content. Everything, for whatever the reason was expected to be some kind of spectacle to dazzle the eyes and, catch somebody, and win your heart over with, dramatic things going on. But there was no established formula for doing that in the 21st century yet. What
True.
worked and didn't work was still kind of hit or miss, and it's due to the implementation of two types of new technology and different techniques that were being used as far as filmmaking. Filmmakers literally did not know how to use them right just yet. But even if they did, the movie, it still suffered from cliche overload. I mean, for crying out loud, 2 fucking villain cards, for crying out loud. Come on.
Oh yeah, we filled them both.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, they sacrificed, a sensible narrative to make the visuals more striking. Movie is absolutely gorgeous. The CGI in this movie, and listen to me, I'm saying it's a game, still works. It looks wonderful, and it still looks good. It looks almost as good as CG movies do today. But the story was hackneyed to begin with, and it was doomed to just be poor at that point, and it poorly aged. And it was already poorly aged when the movie came out. I still have difficulty with the fact that the story was essentially told better 7 years later when we saw it as WALL-E.
That's true. But I think part of WALL-E's charm was the lack of dialogue.
Yes, it was.
I mean, 90% of the dialogue was just WALL-E and Eve. That was it.
Yeah, they showed rather than tell. You've got a visual medium, use it that way. I mean, Square was excellent at making games that had an engaging narrative, but also the interactivity. I mean, even some of their not so good games like Secret of Evermore, Final Fantasy VIII, Sword of Mana.
Coronavirus is going around. You might want to get that checked out.
I prefer to refer to it as Kung Flu, but still. Oh, no, that's not going to date this podcast at all. But yes, those games still had their fans, and they still made an impact on somebody. Final Fantasy The Spirits Within was hamstrung by the fact, the company lacked an understanding of how to convey a good story without the interactive element. Do I think it was a good movie? Not really. Do I think it was terrible? Not really. I mean, I've seen and will definitely review worse movies. Unfortunately, though, it's unfortunate that Square Pictures was put under by the failure of this movie, so we don't really know if there could have been any room to improve. But if I were to guess what the biggest problem was, I would point the finger squarely at naming this movie after Final Fantasy. If they had just put it out and said the title was The Spirits Within, I think people would have given it a lot more of a benefit of the doubt, because everyone was expecting Final Fantasy The Spirits Within to be Final Fantasy VII. That's just a fact.
That's true. I would agree with you. I mean, under any other name, it probably could have gotten a fairer shake with the critics, but, they instantly dismissed it because video game movie. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the name wasn't doing it any favors. And then, the fanboys came to see it because Final Fantasy equals video game movie, and that didn't do it any favors. But the thing is, even if they had just called it The Spirits Within, which still wouldn't have made sense narratively, it just, I don't know, it just didn't work.
Yeah, like I said, it could have been okay. Could have been better than what we got. But again, we'll never know because Square Pictures only got the chance to make the one movie.
Yes. Well, and I think the other thing that probably really didn't help was because of when it came out. Again, this is circumstances that were outside of their control. But as soon as people were still talking about this movie in the fall of 2001, and then the world changed so dramatically that the chance to really give this movie, or pretty much anything that came out that summer, or the next 2 to 5 years after it, any kind of fair, unbiased assessment just disappeared because the world's focus shifted to other things. So I think this also kind of just disappeared under the tide of history. I think if people had had more time to analyze it, there could have been options to make changes, or other kinds of movies could have been released that, in a similar vein, that maybe would have moved this technology a little bit more forward.
You present a very valid point, and I can't say that I agree or disagree specifically based on what we've seen here, but I have seen the products of Squaresoft by themselves as well as Square Enix. Mm-hmm. The company knows how to tell a story. The company knows how to show things visually. I don't know why they couldn't make a good movie.
Honestly, more than anything, the visuals, again, still hold up. I mean, I just got Death Stranding. I've been playing that. The visuals are equivalent,
And that's proof enough that they know how to make something look good.
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful. You will look back at this movie in another 20 years and we'll still say, yeah, this movie looks gorgeous. But yeah, the story is where it all folds.
Definitely folds there. So those of you who are listening, and I cannot stress enough how much we appreciate you guys listening to us ramble back and forth about things that most of us nerdy people care about, but the rest of the world might not. I appreciate it like crazy. And I'd love to hear more of what you are thinking as far as this movie. Have you seen Final Fantasy The Spirits Within? By now, because let's be honest, it's been out for almost 20 years. If you've missed it, it's because you literally did not know it existed. But if you want to tell us a little bit more about what you think, whether or not you think our opinions are valid, or if you just want to tell us, hey, this movie was way better than you thought, or hey, I agree, I think this movie is terrible, there's a couple ways you can do that. We have a link tree at linktr.ee/little-old-people-podcast, which has all of our social media that is linked through there at Facebook and at Twitter, as well as our email address, littleoldpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. We are able to be found on Sounder FM as well. So if you want to tell people about us running our mouths on our podcast, that's the easiest way you can get to.
All right. If people want to hear more from you, Mark, where can they go?
You can always find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@home-with-a-geek. I constantly am talking about ridiculous things that are connected to movies, TV shows, video games, comic books, and other things of a geeky nature.
Well, thanks for listening, and tune in again next time. This has been a Little Old People Podcast.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.